A lot of people on my Twitter were getting really excited about Cave Carson Has a Bionic Eye.
Yes, it looks cool.
Just because the title's amazing.
Shade the Changing Girl.
Oh, that is so fucking cool. I'm Derek. I'm Colby. And I'm Lance. And we talk comics sometimes.
Yes, but you do all of our voices this time.
Awesome. Yeah, I won't be saying you guys' names. I'll expect you guys to chime in.
The one-man show tonight.
Yes, ready whenever you are.
Ready whenever you are.
Just do it.
Alright. Hello and welcome to Blah Blah Comics, Blah Blah Curse Words. I'm Derek.
I'm Colby.
And I'm Lance.
And we talk comics sometimes. And yes, that is our prodigious producer, Mr. Lance Stanford from The Night Nerd, joining us for yet another podcast. Hi, Lance.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. This is the first thing like we've officially done since we've been all one big happy family.
Yes.
It's true. Bit of a, I don't know if it's a disclaimer. I don't know. We actually have had Lance on the show before for a really fantastic episode. Our Daredevil retrospective episode was really phenomenal, and then the internet ate it. So if you were one of the people out there who was lucky enough to listen to it, I am super, super happy.
And send us a copy.
You did. Yeah, and if you have a copy, if you still have it downloaded somewhere, for the love of God, send it to us because Colby can actually get it reloaded.
I have about 15 minutes of static.
And if not, welcome to this episode. We hope to make it as good.
Yeah.
Make it better.
Yes, make it better. So, in honor of Batman v Superman, which the people, all three of us on this call, probably had differing opinions of. Lance, I know you were not a fan, and Colby and I discussed it in pretty positive terms.
I mean, I didn't like Men of Steel to begin with.
Right.
Not a huge Zack Snyder fan, but if you heard the Daredevil podcast, you know I have an unhealthy man crush on Ben Affleck. So
It's okay. He was great in it.
True.
Even the negative reviews liked Ben in this film, so I think he's okay.
Yeah, I think you put himself forward rather well. But in honor of Batman Superman, we wanted to do a podcast talking about some of the Superman and Batman stories that have inspired us and kind of defined the characters for us as fans.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
I like that.
It was your idea, dude.
That's why it was good.
Awesome. Okay, good point. Lance, you're our guest. Why don't you start us off? Pick a character and tell us the story that you love about him.
Okay, well, just as I was looking these up, and Derek, you and I talked about this the other day, over on the Night Nerd, I did some of the best Batman and Superman stories also, and we'll see some repeats over here, but after this, I realized a great Superman story is better than a great Batman story, but a good Batman story is better than a good Superman story. So it was hard to kind of narrow them all down. But we'll start with, I guess, Batman. What?
No, I just yelled out a random word there. Don't worry about it. I do it sometimes.
The special Tourette's edition of Blah Blah Comics.
I think I yelled out dark there. I have a lot of energy. I'm still hyped about the Doom Patrol news, so we'll carry on with this.
I'm going to have to go, and this one's probably kind of random, but Batman: A Lonely Place.
Ooh. That
was the story arc where Tim Drake becomes Robin, and it was really kind of pointing out why Batman needs Robin. You know, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, he went out and found them, but Tim Drake, went and wanted to be Robin, figured out who everybody was, did everything, and I thought it was a really cool, because usually, up until then, people just saw Robin as like, oh, okay, it's the Boy Wonder. Nobody cares. Why, Batman's super dark and brooding. Why does he need a sidekick? And it just, and I thought it really helped explain that aspect of the character that, at that point had been around for 40, 50 years or so, and nobody took the time to tell the story about why he needs Robin. And I think that, really helped that dynamic and also make Robin kind of his own character because, obviously nobody liked Jason Todd because they voted to have him killed off. And Dick Grayson really didn't become in itself until he became Nightwing. But Tim Drake, Robin, was his own character and that's when you saw Robin get his own series, and it's really. I mean, yes, it was a Robin story that developed Robin, but I feel like it also developed Batman a lot too. So I'm gonna go with that one.
That's a good one.
I absolutely agree, man. You may not know this. This from one of our much older shows. We actually did a list of our 10 favorite, or actually what we consider the 10 best characters in comics. And honestly, Tim Drake was my 5th best character in comics, period. Yeah, I think Tim Drake is a phenomenal character, and it's because of everything you just said. He sought out to be Robin. He wanted to be, the best he could be, and the best that he could be was the person who helped make Batman better. And I think that's a really wonderful story. I think it's a wonderful way to bring that to Batman's character. Everything you just said, I 100% agree with.
I agree too. In fact, Derek, you're the first one to show me Lonely Place to Die, and you let me borrow that giant library binding thing you have. If I remember.
Oh yeah, I totally did.
Yeah, that was a mind management for Batman trade, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right. Yeah.
That was an epic trade there.
That actually. Yeah, that kind of reminds me, this wasn't on my list, but I did want to talk about it since you brought up Robin. One of my all-time favorite Batman stories is actually, and this made my top 10 favorite Batman stories list, is the $1 Million debut of Batgirl. I've loved how, again, Batman is so inspirational to all of these different people, all of these different good people, that the only way they feel like they can really contribute to society and to Gotham in particular is to put on the mantle of the Bat and become a part of this circle in this universe. And, Batwoman did it, Kathy Kane did it, Cassandra Cain has done it. It's Huntress decided to fight on the good side of the law because of Batman and his Catwoman to a certain extent. But it all goes back, for me, even more so than Dick Grayson, it goes back to Barbara Gordon, the librarian with some gymnastic skills, deciding, I can help, I can be better, and I can make this city better. And the best way to do it is to be like this man who is, he represents everything good about this city. So much like Lonely Place of Dying, I feel like the $1 Million debut of Batgirl also points out what an inspirational figure Batman can actually be to good people. Everybody likes to point out, the villains. The villains wouldn't exist if Batman didn't exist, and we all know it's bullshit anyway. But that's such a common trope for Batman stories. But people seem to tend to forget how so many people put on the cowl because they are inspired by the good this man does.
Oh, that was beautiful.
What about you, Colby?
Oh, first, I think I have to do a disclaimer first. Because I realized I think my experience with Batman is very different than certain people's. Because my first exposure to Batman when I was a kid was watching the Batman Beyond cartoon show.
Right.
Which, of course, is Terry McGinnis, Bruce Wayne's old. Then my first Batman comic I started buying weekly was when Dick Grayson was under the cowl. So, my experience with Batman is Bruce Wayne is Batman, but in my head he's not the only Batman, and Batman, of course, is more of a symbol, and who's under the cowl changes a lot in my head. Okay. So there's a little warning there, because I had to separate Batman from Bruce Wayne for this list a lot. So, I'll continue. Awesome. I'll continue with the Robin thing going on here. I had to put Under the Hood.
Nice.
Mostly because I feel like it's showing what Jason Todd would have turned into had him in Batman, because his tragedy is different than Bruce Wayne's. Much more violent, much more biker, much more deadly.
Totally.
So that always was a story in my head of seeing because of course Nightwing and Dick becoming Batman in my head was, that's what Dick would be like under the cowl. To me, this is what would have happened. Even if Jason hadn't been killed, just knowing his life, what he was doing, I think his Batman would have been more violent, would have killed people, would have done stuff. And plus, that's this great interaction between Bruce Wayne and Jason Todd, and seeing firsthand something that he failed, something that in his head he made, and the monster that he truly created, and him not being able to stop it. And on top of that, the monster possibly getting more done for the city than he is. So, Under the Hood.
I like it. I think that's honestly an underrated story. I do.
I agree. Although, the animated movie is amazing.
It's better on multiple viewings. I actually wasn't a huge fan of it the first time through, but I really learned to dig it watching it again. And John DiMaggio does a surprisingly solid Joker.
It's I think I only own like 3 of the DC films on Blu-ray. Actually, I normally just either rent them or get them digitally. And the only one I would think that was the first one I had like, oh, I have to own this. Was that?
Nice.
I think that was before I even read the graphic novel, to be honest.
Oh wow.
So that made me want to read it.
Awesome.
So yeah, so
I love in that story when he finally confronts the Joker, like how it was that the first or second chapter. Like it starts off pretty quick with him going after the Joker for revenge and just seeing how that dynamic plays out versus how, you know, the hundreds of times we've seen Bruce handle it.
Exactly.
It was really cool.
I think that theme will pop up a lot in my list, honestly, is how Joker and Bruce are connected more than Joker and Batman. And even Joker, his ideology of it's about Batman, don't care. It's Bruce under the cowl that Joker really, my words went crosswired there. It's Bruce under the cowl of Batman that Joker cares about, and you see it with stuff like Under the Hood, with stuff like Black Mirror, and with several other stories where it straight up shows that Joker doesn't certainly necessarily care about Batman if Bruce isn't under the cowl. He kind of just goes into a coma state for most of it, or doesn't care.
Yeah, kind of playing on that. Again, not on my list and not something I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about, but I fucking adore Batman Beyond Return of the Joker.
Oh, so good.
It's just a wonderful piece of animation, and one of the best bits in it is when Terry stops listening to Bruce and actually starts acting like himself, and Joker just can't fucking handle it. Yeah. Terry starts quipping and kind of Spider-Manning it up, and Joker's like, what the fuck? This isn't Batman.
Exactly.
And then Terry starts laughing at him, and he's like, stop now. Why? I thought the Joker always wanted to make Batman laugh. You're not Batman!
Exactly.
Oh, God, it's so good.
It goes back to like one of my favorite Joker moments ever is Black Mirror, where Batman is holding Joker and he's like, you're not my bat, you're a bird of a different feather.
Yeah.
Still, I love that line. So Derek, what's yours?
Okay.
Now that you've gotten into freebies, let's.
Yeah.
I will totally bow and let somebody else talk. I've been I feel like I've bogarted the conversation twice now. So.
Well, now it's your turn. So take that mic up.
All right, picking up the mic. I've talked before a lot about how much I really adore Greg Rucka's run on Batman. I feel like he really managed to play the Bruce versus Batman dynamic. He really enjoyed playing with the what am I trying to say? By bringing his bodyguard into the world, it kind of played off what Lance, you and I were talking about just a second ago with the everybody gets a costume dynamic, except it was more from the point of view of Batman doesn't know how to handle you in his world unless he puts you in a costume, which is definitely a different angle. But there was a single issue story from Rucka's run that was so good and so well regarded, it actually made the 75 Years of Batman hardcover collection, and that was Detective Comics number 757. People forget that Batman is compassionate. He's an incredibly compassionate individual. The story is he's chasing some crooks on a deserted highway that's like over a river, and they smash into a family's car, and the family gets knocked off into the river. Batman doesn't see this happen. He finishes chasing the crooks. They crash. They have a firefight, and in the middle of getting shot at by crooks, he sees their car, and he's like, that bit of damage did not come from this wreck. Okay, red paint, brake lights earlier, and he puts it all together, and at the end of it, he actually uses his detective skills while in the middle of a big breakneck action sequence to figure out this out, and goes and saves the family, and pulls them out of danger, and then apologizes for being so slow, despite the fact that the way the car's air pressure was set up, if he'd gotten there any sooner, he wouldn't have been able to get the door open. The pressure hadn't equalized. So he would have possibly drowned himself if he'd been any sooner. So he actually managed to get there just in time, and he ends the night just shot at. The Kevlar held, but he's got the bruises from the bullets. His ribs are cracked. He's having a hard time breathing. He's been underwater, and he's like, all in all, not a bad night because he saved this family. He was able to keep them and make them a priority. And like I say, it's just a done-in-one issue that really resonates with what a consistently compassionate character Batman and Bruce Wayne are.
Only Rucka could think of something that detailed to show something so simple.
Right, exactly.
I have not read that. I may have to pick that up now. That sounds really interesting, actually.
I'm going to track that down.
It's on Comixology, guys. I actually have most of Greg Rucka. I think I have all of Greg Rucka's run in my Comixology. So yeah, for $1.99, Detective Comics number 757. You guys are going to dig it.
I think aren't they reprinting it as a volume 2 like they did with Brubaker's run?
I would not at all be surprised. And his whole run is phenomenal. It also has that absolutely devastatingly good Two-Face story that was like my number 3 favorite Batman story of all time. Also comes from Greg Rucka's run. So, track it down on Comixology. Buy the Greg Rucka Batman trade. You guys will not be disappointed. It's phenomenal.
I will have to do that.
So I've talked a whole lot. Lance.
Yeah, pass that
buddy,
mic.
What you got?
Pass that mic.
Well, going back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about, is Bruce the Bat? My number 3 is Batman Reborn, where Dick Grayson is under the hood.
Ooh,
and Damian Wayne's Robin. Hear a little excitement out there, maybe?
I took a drink. I'm sorry. I would have wooed or something. That big red was already in my mouth.
I just see you like wooing and spit getting all over your microphone.
It probably did. I don't know. It's not
So
the worst
excited.
thing. Yeah, not the worst thing spun on that mic, sadly. So that's okay.
Ooh, okay.
A lot of music recorded on that. A lot of weird stuff.
I'm not touching that.
That just kind of goes to show when you kind of like what you hit on about when Terry kind of did his own thing. Dick Grayson is, I think, more so than Jason or Tim or Stephanie or any of them. I know there's like 20 Robins at this point, but
Yeah, you didn't mention Blue Jay.
there's so many. A lot of people think they have like a father-son dynamic, but I think it evolved in almost like a brotherly dynamic where he holds Bruce in such high regards, but he still sees his faults and things. And this is after Batman died in the time stream, all that kind of stuff. And so when they did the Battle of the Cowl, I was like, there's nobody else that could be the Bat besides Dick Grayson in my mind. And this story, because Damian Wayne's a little punk ass bitch. He is. I'm sorry, he is.
I love Damian. I do. I know I'm in a minority.
I love Damien.
Yeah.
I love him because he's a punk ass bitch, though. So it's a fair statement.
And see, Dick Grayson's one of my favorite characters in comics, and Nightwing on Injustice kicks ass in the video game. So, but just seeing how everybody's recognizing, they're like, hey, you're Batman, but you're not Batman.
Yeah.
And how he tries to, be his own man, because that's essentially what he's trained for his whole life, is to be Batman, but be his own Batman, but still honor his friend who's gone. And it's what could have been a real gimmicky story, coming out of Batman's dead, new Batman. It could have easily been turned into some kind of 90s cheesy crossover. I felt Grant Morrison did a great job showing that no matter who is the Batman, I think Colby, you talking about how Bruce really isn't Batman to you. This was a great example for those of us who Bruce is Batman, showing that while Bruce is Batman, Batman isn't necessarily Bruce. And I thought it was a good story.
Very fair. No, that's a great story, and I think that's always the beauty of Batman. It's one of the few characters where there's so much lore and so much. It's like a pick your own adventure character where whatever Batman you want to believe in, he's there for you.
That's absolutely true, and that's kind of funny because it both I have a choice on my list that both agrees with and completely is the antithesis of that idea, almost at the same time. But Colby, you go first, and then I'll talk about mine.
Okay, this one's simple. If you read any Batman comic, you know one thing: Batman can never be comfortable. Never. He's not allowed it. He can't be. That's why I'm putting Court of Owls on there. Going right off of Reborn, all stuff. Once Bruce got the cowl back, came in, felt like he was on top of the world, felt like the champion. It was his city. Immediately flipped on him. No, you don't own the city. No, it's not yours. What are you talking about? This has been your city. This has been our city for millions of years.
Right.
Court Owls came in, and that 2-panel happiness Bruce had, flipped it upside down for 12 issues, and showed him, you're never comfortable. You're never going to be happy because no matter what you do, the city's going to throw something at you that you can't handle at first. That's simple and sweet. I'm keeping it simple.
You know, I've had my ups and downs with Snyder's run on Batman, but one thing he's done consistently, and one thing that I can appreciate consistently from him, is that he has, more than any other writer, turned Gotham City into a character in his book.
That's coming up. Don't you worry about that.
Derek, what you got?
Okay, so kind of again, sort of playing on what you guys were talking about with the malleability of the man behind the mask of Batman, and how it is absolutely, you can have other people take the mantle of Batman and take on that inspirational cowl. There's something about Batman: The Return of Bruce Wayne that, again, to me, both confirms that, because it takes place during that time when Dick Grayson was being a phenomenal Batman.
Yep.
But it's the story where Batman's his way through time and space. I mean, you know, he's bouncing around through all these different eras and epochs, and he's still Batman. He's still got that calculating mind. He doesn't even know exactly who he is, but by God, he's going to put some version of that cape and cowl on and kick some ass and, you know, right wrongs and serve justice and do what it takes to bring him back to himself, even more so than the Zur-En-Ah Batman of the earlier story arc from around that same time. I was about to say,
there's a fan theory that I read forever ago, and it was talking about how not a lot of people, but this person kind of connected to believe that when Bruce Wayne Omega beamed it back through time, their point was saying, what if he was basically Zur-En-Ah the entire time and just in his like natural, always on edge state of I'm always aware.
I would believe it, because it's what he does. His default state, his absolute default state at this point as a human being, is to just Batman the shit out of whatever situation he's in.
That's a third Morrison reference, by the way, for those keeping track that always say we talk about Morrison too much. It's going to continue up.
I think it's actually pretty significant that so far Morrison has really dominated this conversation and Miller hasn't. I'm going to come completely clean with you. Frank Miller didn't make my list. While Frank Miller is a defining, and Lance is the same way, I saw him raise his hand, while Miller is a defining Batman creator, he's not a defining Batman creator for me so much. There are other aspects of Batman that I love and wanted to highlight and that define the character more for me. And one of them was definitely Grant Morrison. And Grant Morrison, going all the way back to his JLA run, is the guy that basically came up with the idea that Batman is prepared for anything, and that is literally true. He's literally ready for any situation, and he does it by Batmaning the shit out of whatever situation he's in. And like I say, as sloppy as that miniseries was, I think it really highlighted that idea of, you know, what does Bruce Wayne do when he's trapped in ancient times? Puts on a bat costume and serves justice. What does he do when he's a pilgrim? He puts on a bat pilgrim costume and serves justice and works towards putting himself where he needs to be, because that's who he is, and I adore that.
Well, and you and I talked about this a little bit the other day. Because Frank Miller's not on my list either. He wasn't on my Daredevil list. He's on my Batman list. And because Frank Miller tells great Frank Miller stories.
Right.
Does he tell good Batman stories, good Daredevil stories, good anybody else stories? No. But he tells good, like, it's just like Zack Snyder. You walk in a movie theater, you know you're going to see a Zack Snyder movie. You know you're going to see a Michael Bay movie. Same way with Frank Miller. You know you're going to get a Frank Miller story out of it. And, I mean, and I know that's probably blasphemy to some people, but if you kind of take a step back and don't, just be all over Frank Miller, take a breath and look at it. There's not a lot of difference in a lot of his stories. You know what you're going to get, and that's so. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Is he a great storyteller? Yes. He knows the art of comics and how to throw down a narrative, but I feel like you could put literally anybody. You could put Booster Gold in there, and it'd be the same. Actually, I like Booster Gold. That's probably not a fair.
I would pay a lot of money for a Miller Booster Gold story. I will say that right now.
Honestly, I was just thinking, oh man, a Miller Booster Gold series where Booster Gold suddenly went super noir, but it was also set in the crazy future. That would be. I would pay money for that. I think it's a distinction needs to be made. You're not saying that Miller doesn't make good comics. He crafts good comics, but you could probably swap out Daredevil and Batman between his Daredevil and Batman stories and not make a lot of difference. And I can understand that.
Except Holy Terror, I don't see Daredevil fighting a bunch of Muslims or whatever that whole thing.
I bet Frank Miller could make it happen though.
You can make it happen.
Like,
what are you talking about?
I'm Catholic, so I have to fight you.
Yeah, well, wait a minute.
Exactly.
The setup's right there. He's Hell's Kitchen savior. Frank's in New York City. He was so mad at 9/11. I'm shocked we didn't get a Daredevil versus Muslim story.
Yeah, how is this Holy Terror Batman and not Holy Terror Daredevil? That was actually the easier in.
Oh my God! Call Miller again.
Oh man.
I really hope. I mean, as awesome as it would be if Frank Miller was listening to this, I really hope he's not, because then he's like, "Ooh, I can totally make a Daredevil story now too." And so real quick before I get to my next one, I have a question. It's not on my list, but and if it's on y'all's list, we won't talk about it. But any of you guys, we're talking about switching the cape and the cowl with different people. Did anybody put Paul Pope's Batman 100?
Very close, but it's runners up and on the list exactly.
It's not on my list, but goddamn, that comic is brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah.
So close.
It's not on my. It was a close one, but that's another great example of, Batman's not Bruce. So it's a good story, but. Sorry, moving on. We had to get a little Frank Miller tirade out of my system there for a second.
It'll come back.
My next one is Batman Ego, written and drawn by Darwin Cook, who I love. I mean, New Frontier, I think, is a game changer as far as the history of the DC universe goes, and it's just a great story. When you're talking about the city being a character, when in the opening scene, he talks about, my body fails me, my city fails me, and it's basically Bruce Wayne versus Batman, and how they talk about, how the Batman part of him is, let's make a deal. You let me do what I need to do, and I let you keep being, millionaire, playboy, philanthropist, stuff like that. It's short. It's like 48 pages or something. It's not very long, but we were just talking about how Frank Miller does a great job crafting a story. Darwin Cook, I think, is, and this may get pissing people off. I put him with like Kirby and Ditko, and the old guys as far as the ability to just tell phenomenal stories. He can tell them either with words or with art, but when he does both of them, like he did in Justice League New Frontier and like he did in Batman Ego, it's just it's amazing. Yeah. And I feel like that book is just as important as Year One, or not just the Frank Miller stuff, but even the Grant Morrison stuff. I think Batman Ego is severely underrated.
I'm going to completely agree, because I'll be honest, a huge fan. I don't think I've ever heard of that title.
I read it when it first came out, and then it was one of those things that didn't stay in print very long, so I never managed to get my own copy. I borrowed it from a friend, and by the time I was like, I think I want to reread that. I wonder if I can find it. It's like a couple $100 on eBay if you're lucky. So yeah, it's so underrated. I think it may have been reprinted once, and I haven't seen it reprinted since then. And it is phenomenal. As a gigantic, crazy, huge Kirby booster, I mean, I'm going to take a small bit of issue with that level of comparison. But it's hard to, because you're absolutely right. As a storytelling craftsman, Darwin Cook is phenomenal. Those first two Parker collections he did, Parker the Hunter for IDW, were devastatingly gorgeous. And you're right, his ability to tell a panel-to-panel story without dialogue is bar none at the moment. I don't know if I can give you Kirby just because I'm that kind of fanboy, but I could probably pretty comfortably make a Moore comparison and be okay with that.
Well, like when he rebooted the Spirit, Will Eisner, Eisner, the awards are named after the guy.
Right.
Darwin Cook is the only person in my mind that could have rebooted that, and if you haven't read the first few issues, I mean, after he kept writing it, but then other people would come in and draw and stuff, and then eventually he left. But those first 6-7 issues are amazing, and I love Darwin Cook. I didn't know Batman Ego was that rare. I have it over on the bookshelf. I don't know if you saw it the other day, but
I didn't actually.
Yeah, I actually have it. So I may have to get up to eBay.
I don't know if it's still that valuable, but at one point it was crazy valuable.
I just looked it up. I think it by itself still is worth money because they reprinted it, but they reprinted it as Batman Ego and other stories.
Right, yeah.
That's the only other reprint.
So it's in a trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have just the straight up original, just the Batman Ego.
Yeah, I think that was back when DC was trying to do their prestige format, because they also did that with another one that didn't make my list, but is a phenomenal story, mostly because of the villain, the Man Who Laughs. The Ed Brubaker retelling of Joker's first appearance was originally published as a prestige format, I think 48-page one-shot, that almost immediately, I think it had one print run and then went out of print. Brubaker couldn't get copies of it 2 weeks after it came out, and then they collected it in a nice hardcover with I think one or maybe two other Joker stories that you can still get at a reasonable price. But that The Man Who Laughs by itself it's like a $500-600 book last I checked.
Yeah. So we're talking about these stories that are so hard to find. Mm-hmm. I think our Daredevil podcast falls in that same category.
Yeah.
Yes. If anybody out there has a copy of our Daredevil podcast, guys, that's a super valuable podcast find. So good for you.
The creators can't get it. The editor or producer can't get it. No one can get it. So if you have it, send me a file of that so I can go back up.
And we'll burn it on a CD and autograph it and send it back to you.
Yes.
We'll
along with a sticker or something. We've got new art. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Posted it on the Twitter page. We have an official Blah Blah Comics Blah Blah Curse Words logo that we are going to be doing neat things with in the future. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Colby, what you got, man?
So I've noticed a trend on our list. They seem to be going together really oddly. That's my phone going off with that. That should have been off. But
amateur hour here.
I know. Don't worry, it'll definitely not be edited out. So our lists seem to be kind of reflecting each other in a very odd way. Because my next list, I just wrote these in a random order. Next on my list, I got to talk about Dark Knight Returns.
I figured Miller was going to be on yours, man.
Yeah, look, I'm a Miller sucker. I won't lie. I love Miller. I love me some noir. And Dark Knight Returns, the first 3 Batman things I bought were Year One, Returns, and Killing Joke. I mean, out the get-go, that was where I started. And I've always loved Returns because it just showed me that Batman, no matter what, he can't stop. You can hibernate. He'll always return. Bruce himself may get old, may get senile, may be crazy. He just gets more and more cruel and mean with age. And I think... Of course,
well, that ties into your Batman Beyond appreciation as well, though.
Exactly. That's a lot of. I think a lot of where that comes from too is how different the Miller Millerverse is from like the DC animated universe stuff. The Batman Beyond Bruce is very close in a lot of ways to the same Dark Knight Returns. He may not, including the Power Suit episode where he gets the armor and just armors up and goes. But I've always liked the idea, and like I know BVS played with it too. Of Batman, just he sees so much that he just gets like, screw it, I am going full on. I may not kill you, but I'm not even stepping an inch out of my way to save you. Or you know what? Maybe I'll flip your car so many times you're probably dead. I don't care. Because in my head, old Bruce has always just been like the Clint Eastwood-esque badass that he doesn't give a shit. He's going to stop the injustices that he sees, whether they're injustice or not, really. And I think that's an interesting dynamic that a lot of people don't play with, and for good reason, because that can go south so quickly. But I've always liked the idea of what happens when Bruce that line has finally been broken, and he crossed the line that, you know what? He doesn't. He's not caring about safety anymore, his own or the people he's attacking. All he cares about is getting the job done. Not to mention a lot of people talk about, but the opening of "This Would Be a Good Death," not good enough. Always, to me, defined what an older Batman would be for me.
I'm going to have to flip your cards on you here. You talk about, Batman Beyond, the opening scene of Batman Beyond,
yes,
where Bruce he's broken and he pulls that gun on that guy, and the way that the way you can just see how it makes him feel and how it just hurts him.
Yeah, but then he gets old. That's still 50-year-old Bruce. He's got to get 60s or 70s before he starts killing folks. Remember when Terry first rolls up on him and he's just knocking the crap out of people with canes, and the only reason he stops hitting them is because he has a heart attack.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't think he would ever make that step. And again, that's a thing I had with BVS is the Batman. We were talking about how compassionate he is, and that's even if he's old, he's still.
That's your guy. I don't know. That's your guy's Batman. Look at my list. He's not that compassionate.
See, my rationalization for BVS, what got me through some of the slightly tougher parts of that film, and I talked about it on our big BVS cast, but I kind of just combine the ideals of I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you, plus the line from Dark Knight Returns, rubber bullets, honest, and just between those two, I kind of headcanon rationalized, and I realized that it's a very personal take on it that obviously isn't going to work for everybody. But for me, that's why I was like, okay, with a couple of exceptions, Batman doesn't actively murder anybody. It looks like the weapons on the Batwing and the Batmobile are mostly used on buildings, and yeah, there's probably some collateral damage from that, but at least he didn't snap a dude's neck, as opposed to any of the millions of other ways of stopping this person. Which, yeah, I hated Man of Steel too. Fucking hated Man of Steel.
On a quick side note, did you hear the new DC movie news?
That Wonder Woman's going to be super dark?
No, I was talking about Wonder Woman's gotten pushed forward to sooner. It's got moved to June 2nd of next year, and then they added 2 more movies to their slate. The big rumors. I hadn't heard that. Big rumors, of course, of Batman Solo and either Suicide Squad 2 or Man of Steel 2.
Yeah, I know they're still trying to do something with Superman, and I'm okay with that. I don't know. Like I say, I walked out of Batman Superman with a big dumb grin on my face. I had fun. I enjoyed it. It's not a good movie, but it's a movie I enjoyed, and it's a movie I think people should experience.
We have podcasts about it. Go listen to it, guys. But the one thing about BVS is, love it or hate it, it's one of those things that whatever, people can't shut up about it. So it did something, whether that's good or bad, who knows.
Yeah.
But it did something where people either hate it enough to where they're like, screw that film, why do you like it? Or love enough to go, it was fun as hell, why didn't you like it?
Right.
See, and I didn't get to talk about this and when I talked about it, but what makes me hate it even more now is, it dropped 81% from week 1 to week 2. And because of that, Warner Brothers is pulling a lot of their little indie projects and like smaller movies and stuff to recoup the cost.
Yeah, so they needed to make $1 billion for this film to be profitable, mostly because of the promotional costs.
Yeah.
Well, they've done it.
So all these little films that probably 1,000 times better never going to see the light of day because of it.
It's
so,
a sad fact. I know they've done it. They did it with what was it? Deathly Hallows Part 2 did a similar thing where it dropped 84% in domestically, and they did the same thing with that. They had just a sheet full of awesome indie stuff, and a lot of the movies never got made, and a lot of directors got so mad at Warner Bros. They would never work for them again because they were so close to shooting it. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Warner Bros. Is a weird track of that, where they really care about movies and pictures, but if they have one sinking ship or one ship that's not necessarily sinking, one ship that's doing good, then they're like, it may not do as good as we thought. It's like, well, screw those other films. We're going to make another one of those.
Yeah.
They have a weird track.
I think we could talk a whole other podcast about how much we hate Warner Brothers. But,
or just the sinking ship of tentpole movies in general. But, we are, joyful Batman Superman stories.
Yeah,
joyful. Dark Knight Returns. That was my last one.
Oh, okay. So I just want to ask, do you guys? I only had 4, so I can make my list 5 if you guys want to include make Batgirl's debut, my other one, or I could just finish it now and give you my number one, my story that for all time will always forever influence my opinion of Batman. So I can either talk about the other one or I can talk about that one. What do you guys think?
Well, I've had my 3. I had 4. I've done 3. I had 4 until I went over to find my. Y'all can't see it. I'm holding up my Batman Ego right now. And I found the Alex Ross Batman War on Crime. So I can throw this one in if we need to, but if not, I only have one more too. So.
Then I'll just mention.
You got 2 more?
I got 2 more. I can mention. I've talked kind of about the point of Batman Black Mirror setting up Gotham as in its universe of the duality to Batman, whoever is under the cowl. Something he played with throughout his run, including Super Heavy. Villains change, people change, but the city will always kind of play that duel to Batman himself. So Batman Black Mirror, that's my 1.5.
You can talk more about it if you want to, dude. There's no rush.
I talked for 30 minutes almost about it on our top 10 podcast. I think
that's true.
Go back and check out Batman, our top 10 Batman stories. It's on mine's on there.
Yeah. Okay, so this is not my number 1 definitive. This is just one that I really, really like, and I'm almost reluctant to put it on the list, but I can't help but revisit it, and when I revisit it, I get a lot of joy out of it. It was one of the big early Batman stories for me, and that was Batman Long Halloween. I didn't read it in single issues, but I did read it in the first trade collection that came out. And yes, I know it's basically a knockoff of, I think it was Witness or some other Harrison Ford movie, but that Tim Sale art is sumptuous. It is so good, and the narrative just, plugs along at a really pleasing pace, and it's nice to see Batman being a detective, even if it's the Jeff Loeb definition of detective, and I don't know. It's just I always get a nice, pleasant. It's comfort food comics for me. Reading Long Halloween. It's one that I revisit a lot. I actually ended up buying an Absolute edition of it at one point because I got it for half off, and fuck yeah. So it's fun. Hush was almost on my list for the same reason. Hush is objectively a terrible story, but that Jim Lee art is so good. It papers over a lot of the cracks, and you have so much fun, and it's such a fast-paced, boom, boom, boom read that you kind of forget that the story doesn't make sense. And I think you can say the same thing about Long Halloween. It's got such a great pace. It just, it just plugs merrily along. You just kind of bop along to it as you're reading, and you did the Tim Sale art just draws you in. And yeah, Long Halloween, I love it. I kind of wish I didn't.
Well, I know a lot of people love that story, so no shame, shame.
Yeah, it's a good story. I mean. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like Hush, though, Hush is just fanboy service. It's like, oh, hey, we're going to get all these people to read Batman because we're going to put every villain he has in 12 issues and have Jim Lee draw it. So, yeah, for what Hush was, it was great.
Yeah, it's terrible, but it's great.
I love Hush because I love that character, but yeah, it's all the crossover and all the pop-ups get tiresome pretty quickly. But they're cool.
The best part of Hush is where he asks Riddler, he's like, the joke about the elephant in the tree, and he's like, yeah, it's not funny because everybody knows it. And you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty good burn.
Quick warning, never read Hush Returns to anyone listening. Maybe the first half of issue 1, and that's it.
I thought the first issue was pretty great because he breaks all of Riddler's fingers and then throws him off a building. Come on, that's pretty good.
Fair point. No, that's not the ending of issue 1. That's like the beginning. Issue 1 ends with him being kidnapped.
Oh. Well, then I have a terrible memory of that thing.
That's okay. I'm a Hush fan, and that was one of the biggest disappointments ever to pick it up and be like, I think that's how it ends. I can't even remember. Just don't read it.
Yeah, avoid. So you wanted to talk about War on Crime?
Well, are we doing an extra one, or do you want me to go ahead and do my number one?
Because Long Halloween was my extra, and Colby did his 1.5 with Black Mirror. So please, if that's a story that you love, talk about it, man.
Well, but you're gonna do your number one this round, so I need to do my number one this round, right?
You can talk about both. This is open. There's
okay. Real quick, War on Crime is part of the oversized Alex Ross Paul Dini, which Paul Dini, creator of the DC animated universe, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. I mean, I'm looking at it through it right now, and it's just about how compassionate Batman he stops his crime and he notices his kid, and he his kid from the streets, and he's like, I know what that's like to not have anybody, and it just bugs him. And so in what I think is a good Batman story, it's a Bruce Wayne story also, because Bruce Wayne is dealing with this like douchey asshole who's trying to buy all this stuff. So Bruce Wayne comes in and he buys up the low income housing area and just pumps money in it for the people, whereas this other guy was going to bulldoze it. So it's just a really fun little quick story of Bruce Wayne saves the day and Batman saves the night, and it's really good. So,
and hometown hero Alex Ross, beautiful artist and born and raised in Lubbock, Texas. Went to Lubbock High School.
Really quick side note: do you think that's connected at all to the Batman 44 not that long ago? Remember the entire story was about how Bruce Wayne had pumped all his money into this neighborhood and had gone to and because he pumped so much money in, all the poor people had to move out because rich people were moving in, and it caused all these people to turn to crime.
Right.
Not to put it down on it, but like I'm really curious to know how Snyder includes all these random stories and stuff in his and tries to connect them.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised.
That'd be cool. I didn't even think about that. My number one though, my end all be all. And this kind of, when we did Daredevil, I kind of cheated and said one of my favorite Daredevil arcs was season 1 of the TV show. To me, the definitive Batman story. When I think of Batman, who he is, what's going on, I have to go with Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, the animated movie, the first animated movie. Okay. And it's, if you haven't seen it, I'd almost say it's my favorite Batman movie. Period.
Oh wow!
Including all of them.
I can get behind that.
I will 100%. I think if you're talking Batman specifically, it's by far the best Batman. Because everything else kind of... I love the Nolan movies, but they're kind of focused mainly on other people. And when it gets to Batman, he's normally kind of the side note and the boring... No offense to Nolan movies. He's kind of the most boring part of a lot of those movies. The Batman Bruce Wayne story.
Yeah. Kevin Conroy is my Batman.
Yeah.
And easily. I know Derek agrees with me on this. But when just that whole story of, I'm not going to spoil anything if you haven't seen it, but this new vigilante comes in, is killing all these mobsters, and it flashes back between like when Bruce Wayne first starts to become Batman. Like he goes out and he fights crime, but he's just a guy in a mask, and and it flashes how all these guys that are getting murdered have a tie to his past, and it's just, such a good story.
And it's such a good mystery. It really defines Batman or Bruce Wayne as a person and his role as Batman. Yeah, it's literally got everything.
Yeah, Mark Hamill. I mean, we all know Mark Hamill's Joker is amazing.
Oh yeah.
But I think this and Return of the Joker are his best outings as the Joker, because there's just stuff that goes down, and it's just a little bit darker and a little bit edgier than the animated series. And being a kid and seeing it in theaters, I was like, this is so cool. This is Batman. And this is, after I'd seen Batman and Batman Returns. I can't remember if it came out right before or right after Batman Returns.
Right after. I think Batman Returns was 92. I think Mask of the Phantasm was 94. I would say.
Yeah, that sounds right. yeah, even after seeing those two movies, this Batman story is because we all know his parents got shot in the alley. Blah blah. We've seen it a million times, But this was actually how, and not even like Batman Begins, where he goes training. This is how he actually goes from just being a guy fighting crime to being the Batman, and how it affects, 10 years later, who he is. And it's hands down, when y'all told me to find definitive Batman stories, important Batman stories, that was the first one that popped in my head, because it's like you said, it has everything. It is so good.
Yeah, agreed.
I'll agree with that. It is, yeah, it's a Batman. It is the best Batman being Batman on as far as movies go, I think, period.
What about you, Colby? What you got, man?
So, man, my Batman list got so much darker than yours does. You went off with Mystic and Hopeful, and went crazy. So, I've always looked at stuff and seen, you can really tell about somebody, about something, by their dreams, by their nightmares, by what they're afraid of and what they want. Nothing showed us that anything like it, like Arkham Asylum, Serious House on Serious Earth. I think you literally get to see Bruce Wayne / Batman's nightmares. You see his fear of him himself being crazy. You see his fear of him becoming a Christ image just to be knocked down. His ultimate love-hate with the Joker. His ultimate duality with Two-Face. How he's afraid, is he doing good, is he doing bad? He himself doesn't even know. And it just completely puts you in the head of Batman like no other story can. At least my version of Batman, I guess.
I can totally get down with that. It is definitely. What's funny is that Morrison has more or less disavowed that version of Batman. Like, he wrote that version and then realized after writing that one that actually Batman's a pretty well-rounded guy. He once he put the suit on, he's actually okay. He's mentally much stronger than a lot of people think he is. But for that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I say Nightmare specifically because that's kind of how he's referenced it lately, of looking at it more as a nightmare of Batman, a literal nightmare, and see that one of his big fears is living to die a martyr, yet he can't die. He goes on. The symbol goes on past him.
Right, and like you say, it definitely feels more like a dream. And I think that when you put it in the context of that, giving it that ethereal quality, it totally works within the context of its own story.
That's completely how I look at it. I don't look at it like a figurative, this is a Batman, so I look at it more as, this is what's going on in this man's head when he falls asleep. This is what he is afraid of. This is what his ultimate fear is. It's not necessarily... His nightmare isn't, dying because Joker killed him. It's him going to Arkham, figuring out he may be as crazy as everyone there, and he might not be doing as good as he thinks.
Right, and I could definitely see that being Batman's fear ultimately, and it ties in with what we've been talking about. Batman's compassion, Batman's desire to do good. To steal a line from Chris Sims, Batman, his goal is to capital letters end crime, which is a child's idea of what it means to serve justice. And for him, the ultimate idea is he's not doing as good as he hopes. And I think that's a solid read, dude. I'm impressed.
Always one of my favorites too.
Mine goes back to a lot about what Lance was saying. It's hard to admit that the best Batman doesn't come from the comics, but it's true. Batman the Animated Series is the definitive Batman, at least for me. And tying in with Master of the Phantasm, but just bringing it out to every episode of that series, every facet of Batman we've talked about, the nightmares, the compassion, the Dark Avenger, the friend to children, all of it, every different angle into who and what Batman is was explored within this brilliant television series. Every facet of Batman is given its due diligence, and that for me will always be Batman. That is my Batman. Kevin Conroy is my Batman, but not just that. The Batman that we saw in that series will always be who Batman is to me. So I can't, in good conscience, sit here with you guys and talk about comics that I love and not mention how the animated series is the pinnacle for me, and that no one in the comics, as much as I love Morrison, as much as I can appreciate Miller, no one has managed to reach, even Paul Dini when he was writing the comics, didn't manage to reach the highs that television series achieved more or less every episode.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Kevin Conroy, that Batman, not only spawned a whole universe, a whole different Earth that is still acknowledged today, but he played that Batman for 20-something years. I mean, and anytime I hear somebody besides Kevin Conroy voice Batman, I don't get mad, but
you kind of cringe a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Favorite episode?
Almost Got Him.
I'm torn between that one and There's a Batman in My Basement.
There's a Batman in My Basement is adorable, honestly. It's not one of my favorites, but I can definitely appreciate it for what it is. But yeah, Almost Got Him is such... Because it's one of those stories where Batman doesn't actually really show up, and you get to see what he looks like through the eyes of all these different characters. Yeah. And it's got the best Killer Croc moment for not actually ever being a Killer Croc moment, because it's Batman making fun of Killer Croc, which is hilarious.
I had a giant rock.
I threw a rock at him. Yeah, just everything about that episode. The animation is ridiculously good. It's one of the best studios they had that animated that episode. Lots of little things in the backgrounds. That's actually a reason I really like Harley and Ivy. Not only does it give me the basis for the Harley essay I wrote recently, but there's a bit in that episode where Harley sits in a chair backwards and then just rocks the chair back and forth going forward at camera. That's actually really fucking hard to animate, and it wasn't storyboarded. But it was a character moment that the animators over in Korea brought to the table because they wanted to show, basically they wanted to show off, and they wanted to give Ivy a bit of character in that little moment. So little stuff like that constantly showing up in this TV series just completely redefined what it was like to watch cartoons and what it was like to understand who Batman was.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and you can't. You also have to give credit to Andrea Romano, the voice director.
Yes,
she, bringing all those people together. We
could do a whole podcast on how great Batman the Animated Series is.
I was fixing to say, I'm not saying we should do that, but I'm not saying we shouldn't do that.
You guys missed the most obvious episode to talk about, given the subject matter is Tales from the Dark Knight.
Yeah. Shut up, Joel. Yeah, no, that one was great too, but man, Almost Got Him. Yeah, half of me wants to murder you. What does the other half want? To hit you with a truck. We used to everything about that show. Okay, so Superman.
That's the next one.
I thought of a fifth one for mine, so I actually have 5, but I can knock one off if that'll make things easier.
I thought of a fifth one too. So
okay, Colby, are you sitting on 5?
I'm sitting on 5, but do we all have the same number 1?
Actually, I kind of wanted to point that out. If you don't mind me spoiling your number 1,
all right.
Can we all just agree that All Star Superman is the greatest Superman story ever?
No.
Oh.
Because I specifically didn't put All Star Superman on my list because I thought it was going to be all of our number 1s.
I mean, it's phenomenal, and I'll agree that it's the best Superman, the best story with Superman in it, but it's not the best Superman story. And when we get to my number 1, you'll see why. But
how about we do this one backwards? Since we just ruined Colby's number 1, we'll do this one backwards. We'll have Colby defend his choice for number 1, and then Lance rebut with your number 1. Then I'll come in with my number 1, and we'll just go backwards from there.
Okay,
sounds great.
So Colby, tell us why All Star Superman is the greatest Superman story of all time, because it totally is.
All Star Superman. Here we go. Debate team, go. Superman. It's him at his ultimate peak. It's what Superman at his purest form can be and could be. It's his ultimate symbol, his ultimate goal. It's seeing him. I keep saying ultimate because it's true. This is him at his best, at his brightest, at his most all-star. And plus, it played with the it played with the all-star title better than any book ever has or will. Because because he literally becomes a star.
Yes, he
Yeah.
does.
But also, Morrison Quietly, one of my favorite art teams ever. It is one of the few stories to ever make me care about Bizarro.
Nice.
It's one of the few stories that made the Clark and Lois relationship, the hidden secrets of it, actually make sense a little. It's the also for those the constant fighting of who would win this fight, who would win this fight. It's the ultimate story to go, look, also Superman, he's lifting 200 quintillion tons and he has no limit and he becomes the sun and it's kind of inferred that he may be God and creator of our universe. And see, it's like the Bible. That's why it's great. But yeah,
That's our pull quote for the episode. I don't know if we have pull quotes on SoundCloud, but if we do, All Star Superman is kind of like the Bible.
It's the prequel.
Is the pull quote for this episode.
Technically, it's a prequel to the Bible. The Bible picks up where Superman All Star left off.
Even better. Oh my God. We have to put that on a t-shirt or something. The Bible picks up where All-Star Superman left off. Dash Colby Cudney.
Yeah.
I need that on a piece of merchandise somewhere.
We can make it. But yeah. And the animated... We're talking about animated cartoons. The animated cartoon's not as good. Because we're talking about cartoons all here lately. So the Superman, All-Star Superman movie, not great because you can't fit all that crap into a movie. Unless it's like, especially with their like 80, 90 minute limit, you can't do it. There's too much weird stuff, too much crazy stuff, and plus it's been out for when did it come out originally?
2012, I think. I don't know. It came out a week before Dwayne McDuffie died, and I think he's been dead 2 or 3 years. So
all these years later, there are still so many fan theories coming about what this panel could mean, what this could mean, and has my all-time favorite Superman moment of Superman saying goodbye to Lois just so he can go hug a suicidal girl who's about to end her life, just so he can be with her for a second. And so he can maybe convince her off the ledge. And it's such a sweet, cool moment. One of my all-time favorite panels in comics, period. And one of the only comics that ever actually brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah, issue 10 of All-Star Superman is one of the single greatest comics ever published, period. I can get behind that full force.
All-Star, there we go.
So Lance, your position, All-Star Superman crap. What do you what are you saying in this place?
Whoa. Okay, like I said, All-Star Superman is the best story with Superman in it, but it's not the best Superman story. The best Superman story, written by Steven T. Seagal, it's called It's a Bird. And it's originally published as a hardback, again, short, like maybe 60, 70 pages. It's essentially the story of Steven Seagal being offered to write Superman, and he can't relate to the character. He has flashbacks of being a kid and reading these Superman comics, and Superman can do everything as he has family members die of diseases. And he's like, well, if Superman can save everybody, why doesn't he? And he's dealing with the editor of DC, saying, I can't take this job because I don't get the character. And as it goes on, the editor's like, you're a moron. We're offering you Superman. Everybody wants to write Superman. And he has like a driver, and he tells the driver, he's like, yeah, they want me to write Superman. And he's like, oh, dude, you should. I love Superman. And as the story goes, he starts to see the real world impact of Superman. There's all these people that, and he even kind of mentioned, is like, they don't know Superman. Like, they don't know all the stories,
right,
but they know who he is. They know he's a beacon of hope. The S stands for hope. I mean, that's another thing.
That's a Mark Waid thing, not a Zack Snyder thing.
Not how I see it.
Joking. But, they go on talking about, and as he goes on, he starts realizing this guy has a Superman shirt, this guy has a Superman shirt, and he realizes that even though he may have been, disenfranchised with Superman, that the world needs Superman. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and so he starts coming with ideas, and he's like, if I don't write these stories, somebody else will. But I won't. And by the end of it, he takes the job writing Superman, which he did write Superman for a while, late 90s-ish, mid-90s, and it's just, you want to talk about bringing a tear to your eye. There's so many parts in that story. It's just, I could, we keep saying, oh, I could do a whole podcast. I could talk 2 hours about this book and how amazing it is. And it just hits on every single level. And not a lot of people have read it because it's not a comic book. It's not a Cape and Cowl story,
right.
But it is the best Superman story ever published.
I feel awful because I own it. I actually have a digital file of it I've had for literally years, like probably close to a decade, and I still haven't read it. And I need to go load that onto my iPad and read it. That's wonderful.
Well, here's something that I forgot to mention that negates that. Grant Morrison met Superman, so hey.
Mine is actually kind of my number one. Kind of hews closer to Colby's side. I didn't go with All-Star Superman because like I said, I kind of thought we would all be like, yeah, All-Star Superman is great. Here's some other great Superman
stories. You want Secret Identity to match his.
Actually, Secret Identity is on my list, jerk, but it's not my number one.
I was trying to guess it. I was like, man, if you went super meta too.
No, mine is also Grant Morrison, and I went with Final Crisis, specifically Final Crisis issue 7, in which Superman saves the universe with a wish and defeats the bad guy with a song, which is just about the Supermanist Superman thing ever put to paper. I mean, you talk, Colby, about how he, had no upper limit to strength after a certain point and literally turned into a star and fired the sun. But to me, Superman being a being so completely, basically composed entirely of hope, using a wish to bring the entire universe back from extinction and defeating the concept of entropy with what is essentially, a ballad from Hair is that's Superman to me. That is the defining Superman moment for me. Oh. He is capital H hope. Oh. And that is.
Don't you mean capital S hope?
I do. And that is my Superman, and the Superman who can do that is the Superman that I want to see. Which is again why I to bring it more to a negative point, I really dislike Man of Steel because that was not the Superman I got. And at least with Batman versus Superman, I can use the thread thin excuse of, well, Lex Luthor was behind it all, and I can again headcanon my way into making that okay.
But, again, we got to stay with Batman and Superman because this could be a whole other podcast again about BVS.
It could, but Lance has differing opinions, and it's just so nice to have that, because you're a hardcore fan. Lance really didn't like it, and I liked it, but I admit it has massive problems, and I have to basically justify a few things to myself. So I constantly feel like I'm on the defensive from both sides. So I'm the one that keeps bringing it up. I will try to stop. Okay. Colby, what's your number 2?
I'm going to put a 1.5 there of Multiversity for a lot of same reasons you just said about Final Crisis.
Nice.
Yeah, it's Multiversity. Go read it because I don't want to sit here and explain it for 30 minutes because it's going to be a long haul if I do that. That's why it's not on my list, to be honest.
Nice.
So, I went with a slightly less hard one to explain, but still pretty hard. Action Comics number 9, The Curse of Superman from Morrison's Action Comics run.
That is a wonderful issue. That's definitely a runner-up for me.
Yes. Earth 23, President Superman, kind of shows how diluted the message of Superman can become if you basically give it up to the media, give it up to greed for it to happen. Also shows that every Earth needs a Superman. But if money gets in the way, you kind of lose what it means along the way and what it represents. Mm-hmm. And also, for the balls of when it came out.
Yeah, which was around about the same time as Man of Steel, right?
Yeah, it came out around the same time as Man of Steel, and also around the same time of all the weird backstage politics DC was going on at the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for Morrison, the best you have this comic come out which said, who cares if it's not selling? We need this comic. It's more important than money. For Morrison to come on the scene and say that, it's Morrison. He has the right to do it because they're not going to reprimand him. It's Morrison. What are they going to do? Fire him?
Right.
So yeah, also, I don't remember single issues that well. Action Comics number 9 has always remained in my memory of that issue, that title, what it meant. All these years later, I've probably read it one time since later, but I still remember it very vividly. And it was Action Comics with a pretty fun run, but it didn't match All-Star, didn't match what Multiversity would become, didn't match Final Crisis and these grandiose ideas. But you had an issue like this, which just came from nowhere, and it was technically a fill-in issue on top of that.
Right, yeah.
And it just blew open the floodgates of everyone going from 7.8 to 8.0 reviews, and decent. Then all of a sudden, this one comes back and goes, oh yeah, here is Morrison doing Superman. This is why this man does this.
This was the Superman we were expecting.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
We were told that Grant Morrison was writing a Superman book.
Didn't even have our Superman from Prime or Earth 33 in it.
Right.
Where one day he'll come. So.
Yeah. Grant Morrison, I think, they're putting all these other guys in charge of their film departments and their media outlets, but I think they need to let Grant Morrison a little bit more say in all that.
I would love that, but I want to see that board meme just, no, it's a trans-dimensional being that comes from the fifth dimension that stops this time bullet, which stopped the Omega beam, which is why Superman never died. I would love to see that board meeting.
Just to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, it's like, what is he talking? I can't understand the accent. Two, all I heard was a lot of weird stuff there. And then you have Zack Snyder and Jeff Johns come in and just go, Superman means hope, and we have time travel, so we'll go back in time, and he didn't die, therefore he'll be happier because the fans want him happier. And Morrison was like, that's what I said.
So between that and Frank Miller writing a Booster Gold story, we're on fire for DC.
Dude, I cannot.
They should.
Young Animal, come my way.
Yes. That is a future podcast for sure.
Give me Enigma.
All right, my number 2 is got to be Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Lovely.
Which was essentially the final Superman story before the modern age. Alan Moore, back when, he was crazy, but not like crazy Alan Moore that we all know today. And
went full wizard.
Yeah. And it's funny because it came out around when Watchmen came out. Mm-hmm. And, Watchmen's so dark and gritty, and I dare say that Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is the happiest story Alan Moore has ever written. And it brings in, it was basically the all-star Superman of its time, because it brought in, any character you could think of, and he, at the end, he dies, but doesn't, and it's just a beautiful story, and it's all told it's told in flashbacks, and then at the end there's a big reveal, and it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of what really happened. But it was a great send-off to the Superman of, the old era, where that could do anything, and each week he had a new power and everything, and Alan Moore just handled it wonderfully. And like I said, I would say it's the all-star Superman of its time, of that age of comics.
And I think you touched on the most important aspect of that story, which is it is Alan Moore's farewell to the Silver Age Superman, and to a certain extent, almost prophetically, a farewell to silly comics. Comics from the 50s and 60s, comics with that mentality of, it doesn't matter what we do this issue because we're just going to do, another story the next issue. It doesn't matter if it contradicts because we're having a good time and the kids are enjoying it. And he very touchingly managed to take that very silly framework and do something very serious, but not po-faced. Serious as in, I respect this material. He had a healthy respect for the silliness of those books, and that really shined through in that story. I love that story, so that's an excellent choice, man.
Yeah, and you wouldn't really see that kind of appreciation until Grant Morrison took over Batman, I think.
I would argue Kurt Busiek. But he was always doing it on the fringe. He did it over in Astro City. He tried to bring it to some of his Superman run. But yeah, it didn't get mainstream until Morrison and Batman.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking through it right now, and like where Crypto dies. That's just sad. Oh, sorry. It's okay. Yeah. Move on before I start crying.
It's okay. What's so funny is that you and I, Lance, actually have pretty similar lists. We're just going in vastly different directions because I have one of mine. Mine's actually my last one is very much rooted in 50s and 60s Superman continuity, but my number 2 is one that you and I talked about when I guest hosted on The Night Nerd, Hitman number 34.
Mm-hmm.
Garth Ennis couldn't be more different than Grant Morrison in a lot of ways, but he's had arguably just as big an impact on comics. And there's something super special about this traditionally very funny book about a hitman, a guy that kills people for money, sitting on a rooftop with Superman, and Superman having a bit of crisis of faith, and Tommy Monaghan, the hitman, basically looking at him and being like, fuck you, you're Superman. I get it. You don't get to do everything you always want, but do you have any idea how much you actually do? Do you have any idea how much the rest of us look up to you? You're fucking Superman. You never not do good things. And basically kind of giving Superman a pep talk on the idea of you don't have to be perfect, you just have to keep being you. And it's a really wonderful, touching story that very clearly comes from the heart of Garth Ennis, somebody who traditionally is loves to take the piss out of Cape Comics. He very clearly has an adoration and respect for Superman, and it shines through. And it's really great to see, because something that Superman comics can fall in the trap of is you spend so much time with Superman, you forget why he's special. So when he guest stars in another person's book, and that person basically shits themselves with awe and glee, and just is overcome with emotion that that's fucking Superman. It really kind of grounds you in the myth of this character. So yeah, I fucking adore Hitman. I've read a number of issues. They're all fun and funny, but issue 34 is on another level.
Well, this is the perfect segue actually for my next one.
Awesome.
Which I talked about in my Batman number 1. Seeing Batman through his nightmares, this is kind of seeing who Superman truly is through his dreams. It's for the man who has everything.
Yes, excellent, awesome.
Which always stuck out to me because it shows at its heart his ultimate dream, what he truly wants. It isn't world peace, it isn't a happy life with Lois, it isn't anything, it's normality.
Yeah.
He ultimately
But even his normality is like that he can tell it's not right.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think that's important too.
Yes, and I've always looked at it more as because it was him figuring out that what's actually going on outside of the dream. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, to me it always stuck out because it just shows me that he does want to inspire. He does want to be the hopeful symbol. But like you mentioned earlier about he doesn't always get to do what he wants. He will never get to be normal. And that's ultimately what he wants, is just to fit in. And he will never have that option.
Right.
So that's why it always stuck out for me in Superman, is that he is our ultimate symbol of hope, and yet he can't be what he wants to. It's the old adage of he's a god trying to be a man. He can never be a man, but he can try his best.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I had that on my list, but I'll substitute it now for one of my runners-up. But yeah, I mean, you look at that story, and it's been adapted. It was on an episode of Justice League Unlimited. Mm-hmm. Supergirl, as mediocre as that show is, they even did a really cool episode. It was for the girl who has everything, but it's a great story. And
the Watchmen team, what's up?
Yeah.
Talking earlier
Alan
about
Moore and Dave Gibbons just straight up doing a Superman story because what the hell, Alan Moore loves Superman.
Mm-hmm.
His sick mind somehow does.
It's because it's Superman, man. Superman done properly breaks all barriers. Superman is that character, Mm-hmm. It's so hard to put into words what Superman actually means to comics and to comics fans. So I'm not going to try. That's a different podcast. I'll try to put something together because it's bigger than any one nerd talking on a podcast. So let's get back to stories.
Read It's a Bird. And
yes.
Explain it all for you.
There you go. Yes. I am still putting that on my iPad as soon as we're done here.
Why am I not?
You're going to text me later and be like, oh my God.
So, where are we at?
We're at Number 1, 2, 3, or number 3 is what I just did.
Oh,
I haven't done my number 3.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess I'm up. Okay.
Okay.
Oh no, I did my number. No, I haven't done number 3. Number 3, I did What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way.
Oh,
Awesome.
good one.
The reason I like that story is that even though, we talked about Superman had his send-off, a lot of people still, like you just mentioned, he's not, a lot of people have trouble relating to the character because if he's a god, well, why doesn't he be a god? Or, and especially now, thanks to Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, kind of started it, and then really once you brought out like the Authority and things like that, people love the dark, gritty superheroes, or they think they do. And after Nightfall, when Azrael became Batman, that's when Batman kind of addressed it. But this is when Superman addressed it with a team who was basically the Authority. Let's be honest, it was pretty much a copy of them.
Yeah.
And they, he just shows them how he's not an antique. How the way he does things is still the way they should be done. And Zack Snyder obviously never read this issue, but it was one issue, and that they turned into one of the animated movies. So that's how much power it has, and I think it was really good to kind of, not to sound like an old man, but put these punk kids in their place. Where when it comes to Superman, about how original Superman, Truth, Justice, American Way, that's still relevant, even more so than ever, arguably. It's just a really, and plus the way he handles all those guys, he's such a nonchalant smartass about it too, which is really cool. And it just, to me, helped kind of bring Superman into the new generation, and not make him so dated and stuff. So that's going to be my number 3.
I dig it, man.
Derek.
My number 3 is an exceptionally weird choice, I think, but not so much for the story itself, but for the message behind it. My number 3 is Superman Speeding Bullets, which was an Elseworld story where instead of crashing in Kansas, Superman's rocket crashes in Gotham City, and he's adopted by Thomas and Martha Wayne, and at the age of 6, his parents are murdered, and he becomes Batman. And yeah, it sounds awful.
No, that's not what I'm laughing. I'm laughing at his mom's name being Martha.
Oh yeah.
Why'd you say that? Sorry.
Honestly, for that movie, I'd never made that connection. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know why I never did. But it's Batman was basically, ostensibly, it's supposed to be Batman with superpowers, and for some goddamn reason, Lex becomes the Joker for no apparent reason in this universe other than the tie-in. But ultimately, the reason it made this list is that it at the end of it, Batman, Clark Wayne, or they may even call him Bruce Wayne, I can't remember, but he renounces the Batman identity and becomes this much more positive hero of the light, Superman. And the idea basically is, Superman is a capital letters good dude, and ultimately he's an optimist. He can't be Batman because he doesn't have the capacity to hold on to that kind of anger. He forgives, he puts it behind him. He can't help but be this symbol of light. Even if you were to put that person, that being from Krypton, in the same circumstances that created the Dark Knight, he could not be that person. And I think that was ultimately a really important lesson and a great distinction between the two characters. I'm not saying Batman is a lesser human being for letting his tragedy define him the way he has, but it shows how different Superman and Clark Kent actually is.
I think it almost shows how more.
Go ahead, Colby.
I was just gonna say, I think it actually shows how more of a human Batman is compared to Clark, or Bruce is, that he the tragedy consumes him, whereas Clark is allowed to kind of break free of the shackles. where, like a lot of humans, their tragedies define them, and it's hard for them to break free.
Well, and this also goes back to our Batman side. You know, when we were talking about Hush, that's one of the lines in Hush is Batman's, monologuing, and he's like, deep down, Clark's a good guy, and deep down, I'm not.
Right, yeah.
And that, it, for as cheese as it is, it right there, that illustrates is that Clark can't be Batman, and Bruce can't be Superman. So, yeah, I agree, man. That's a great story. That's a good call.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I say, it was definitely a weird one. When I first thought of it, I was like, this can't be right. And the more I started parsing it, I was like, well, it has a really good message there. So yeah, that ultimately, the message ultimately won it over for me.
Oh, that's okay. We're about to get weirder.
Hit us.
So mine is also an Elseworld story of types. It's not even finished coming out yet, though. But the first, 7 issues are amazing and some of the best Superman I've ever read. It would be number 2, but it's not over yet, so I can't put it there yet. American Alien.
I knew that was going to be on your list, man.
Can't deny it. It is by far the best Superman I've read since All-Star. It's by far, as far as the message of Superman, has so many just great moments, and you get to see Clark growing up and learning these lessons, learning to become a hero and learning what's behind it, seeing that, kind of like Man of Steel shows, if his life went a different way, maybe he'd be a different person. Maybe things would be as bad. And kind of like on the counterpoint of yours too, where that's what I love about these characters is you can have so many different versions of them and see where they go. This one you see the positive side, and just seeing him, even small stuff from when he's a kid, getting angry and punching this window, and then him talking to his dad, and after talking to it, realizing that, man, someone had to make that window. They had to produce the window. They had to frame it. They had to put it in the place. They had to do all. And by me breaking it, I've just insulted every single person down the line that had anything to do with that piece of glass. And that getting a callback later on when he breaks Lex's window and is still sad about it all these years later. And you have these great moments of just him learning what it is to be this incredible symbol of hope. And him growing into it instead of him just kind of jettisoning into it. So American Alien, Max Landis, and tons of different artists.
I have no opinion because I haven't read it. I'm honestly, just from your unabashed adoration, I will pick it up in trade. I will give it a shot, but I'm going to wait until the story is complete before I dive into it.
Pick that shit up.
Yeah, I just added it to my queue for
Nice.
stuff. So check out.
And plus,
I hadn't read it either.
You get drunk Clark at one point fighting Deathstroke in the most hilarious fight I've seen in my life, and it's great. So, if that helps at all.
Yeah. Drunk anything helps. No.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on Elseworlds, my number 4 is going to be, it was my number 5, but now it's my number 4, is Red Son.
That was so almost on my list, so I'm really glad it was on yours.
It's an Elseworlds tale where he landed in Russia instead of America, and just the way the story develops, it is very much a fan service. Mark Millar thought of it when he was a kid, and luckily became famous enough that he could write it, and it's just a fun, good story. And especially at the end, the little twist at the end, where it turns out that he's actually Lex Luthor's descendant in the future, traveled back in time. Just is like the icing, the cherry. It's everything. That extra little bit, and you're just like, oh, that's cool. And it's a cool story. And seeing Batman, I almost put it on my Batman side, because Batman in Red Son is a bad mamma jamma. Yeah. And if we ever did a Wonder Woman list, it'd probably be up there, because it shows her every issue she's different. She goes from being this really hard warrior to I'm in love with this guy, to being where she at one point sacrifices her own sanity to save Superman. And it's just such a good story. It's just fun. Again, a short a 3-issue Elseworld. I mean, they were prestige formats, so they're like 40 pages, 42 pages a pop. But such a good story.
And I think, if you guys don't mind me interjecting a little bit, that kind of ties back to what I was talking about with Hitman and what Colby was talking about with American Alien with Max Landis. Something about Superman brings out the best in writers who normally would take the piss out of the subject matter. I mean, people tend to forget Mark Millar wrote the Children's Adventures of Superman comic because he fucking adores Superman. Garth Ennis, who will take the piss out of any superhero you throw at him, fucking adores Superman. Max Landis fucking adores Superman, and it shows in all of their work. He's a character. Steven Seagal.
Alan Moore.
Steven Seagal learned to adore Superman. Alan Moore fucking adores Superman to an extent that is actually kind of scary. There's something about this character that makes writers bring their A game and bring a respect to a type of story that they don't normally show. And I think that speaks to the power of this character.
Well, that's what I said at the top of the show. A great Superman story is infinitely better than a great Batman story.
Yeah.
I feel like, because it does. It's just something about him. So yeah, I agree 110% with that.
My number 4, kind of along the same vein. Colby mentioned it earlier. My number 4 is Secret Identity.
Such a good story. Kurt
Busiek and Stuart Immonen. And again, it kind of goes back to the overarching theme we've been talking about. And I think it also kind of touches on what we've kind of gone throughout this episode. Batman is an inspirational figure. Superman is an aspirational figure. Batman is the character we want to be like. Superman is the character we should want to be like. And in Secret Identity, it's set in the quote-unquote real world. There's a kid whose name just happens to be Clark Kent, and he learns around, kind of like mutant time, around about puberty, that he's got Superman powers, and has to learn kind of the Spider-Man lesson of great power coming with great responsibility. But he takes the inspiration and the aspiration of Superman and applies it to his own life, and becomes a better person because of who he seems destined to emulate. And that's wonderful. That's, again, it points back to that idea that Superman is, I don't want to say infallible, because that gets into weird Jesus territory, but he is the character that Superman is our best selves. And Superman is our best selves all the time, and he's never not. He never turns off. And I think Secret Identity is just another illustration of that idea.
Aww.
Yeah, there's one, I think it's in, I can't remember if it's issue 3 or 4, because there's only 4 issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he for those that don't know, like, he ends up working for the government, because it's basically they're like, hey, you either work for us, or we're going to kidnap you and clone you, and your clones are going to work for us. And so he's working for them, but there's an issue where his handler at the, I can't remember if it's the FBI or CIA or something else, his handler through the government is retiring, and Clark is debating, because I feel weird calling him Superman. Yeah, I feel okay calling him Clark, but and he's debating, should I get him a gift? So he gets him a gift, and after it all goes down, his handler looks at him. He's like, hey, I loved your books, because Clark, just like in the comics, he's a writer. And he's like, I've been waiting years to tell you how much I loved your writing. And there's that moment, that little trade, you're just like, oh, it's just such a human moment in comics. And it was that, I mean, the stuff with his daughters is really cool and everything, but that one scene, I think, is probably my favorite scene out of that whole series.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Man, this means it's up to my final pick now.
Oh, don't worry, my final pick is weird as hell, so.
I'm changing. I'm calling an audible. I really had Action Comics 775, What's So Funny, Truth, Just American Way. For that same thing, is like, I've always liked the idea of Superman of remaining to his goal, but showing that he has thought about it a lot, about how easy it would be for him to kill, how easy it would be for him to change everything and possibly drastically make the world better or make it worse by killing, but it's a feat that he's not going to take. in the major universes. So it was always a cool idea to me. But I'm calling audible here because, in the spirit of nature, and I had just looked at it in front of me because it was on your list already. I'm changing it because I'm changing it to the one time Superman was beyond stumped, to where he could not do anything, couldn't say anything, and Superman. And the only time I can think of seeing him in this light, I'm going Doom Patrol 29 of him trying to figure out how to fix the problem of the painting that stole Paris.
Yes. Oh, that was delightful.
Seeing Superman being seeing an alien from another time, not another time necessarily, but another place, another species with powers, with all the stuff that's nearly indestructible, and seeing him looking at a painting just utterly shocked and confused is an incredible moment in comics, period.
And again, brought to you by Grant Morrison.
Possibly the first time he played with the character, actually.
I don't know, did Superman show up? I feel like Superman showed up in Animal Man.
Yes, maybe. So it's been a while since I've read Animal Man.
I feel like it. I mean, it's been years and years and years since I read Animal Man.
Yeah, it hadn't been as long for me, but it's been long enough to where I really... Whatever. It's one of the early times he's played.
It's one of the earliest appearances. If not the first, it's probably like the third.
And with several members of the Justice League. And just that initial image of them all standing around the painting looking and trying to figure out just what is going on with this Paris painting, the Brotherhood of Dada, and all this stuff. And you're like, it's so cool to see Superman and see the Justice League just stumped. And that's why this is a segue and possibly a hint to next week's podcast. Seeing how them really show that the Doom Patrol is what they say, they're the world's strangest team, and the problems they face, only they can face. Even Superman can't handle some things. So it's kind of seeing Superman not being brought down by kryptonite, not being brought down by magic or doomsday or power, or this being brought to utter confusion by a painting is a beautiful thing in comics, I think.
That's lovely. Because like I say, mine's going to be super weird too. So I'm very, very happy to hear that. How about you, Lance? What you got?
Well, before I get to my last one on that, what you're talking about, Superman being killing, not killing. Honorable mention, real quick. I'm going to cheat here. Is the last episode of Justice League Unlimited where he's fighting Darkseid, and he's talking about, I always have to hold back. I never can unleash. I can never let go because I'm afraid of what I can do. He's like, but I don't have to do that with you. That little scene, is great, and so that's going to be an honorable mention here.
Nice.
Even though Lex Luthor's the hero of Justice League Unlimited at the end of it all, but no, mine, and I'm sure I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this. I've said that a lot because I like what I like. And my number 5 pick, it was 12 issues, but you could tell it should have been 48. If it had been 48 issues, or even 30, if it had been a 3 or 4 year run instead of 1 year run, I think it would have been at the top of a lot of people's list. And that's Brian Azzarello's For Tomorrow with Jim Lee. Yeah, I know, but because each issue could have been 3 or 4 issues easily.
It's pretty,
and it's just the back and forth with him and the priest about if you are a god, if you can do all this, why don't you? Why don't you do? I appreciate what you do, but why don't you do more practical things like cure cancer, or why don't you do more practical things instead of just fighting aliens all the time? And Jim Lee's art, as always, amazing. But and when he fights the elementals, that could have been 6 issues right there. But Brian Azzarello had to cut everything down into 12 issues. He's fighting these elementals, which are, the whole thing is super rushed, and go back, reread it, and just imagine if he could have had time. But he's fighting these elementals, and he basically calls them out, and he's like, hey, I have seen worlds destroyed. My first world was destroyed. He's like, if we fight, I will destroy you. I will destroy this world, and I will go and I will find another world. I am stronger than you. I am better than you. And they just back down. They realize that that's a fight they're not going to win. And it's sad because a lot of people don't view it as a good arc. And it really is, like I said, it's just super compressed. Super compressed. I mean, the whole thing with the Justice League happened in one issue. Could have been 3, 4, 5, 6 issues right there. And so that's, like I said, that wasn't my number 5, but since we already had For the Man Who Has Everything, I wanted to switch it. Mm-hmm. And if you go back and just go back and reread it with if he had more time, and it's but even then the down scenes with the priest are phenomenal. Some of the best Superman dialogue. You know, at one point he crushes a rock into a diamond and just tosses it into a fountain. And just seeing the level of separation, and this goes back to For the Man Who Has Everything. You know, at the end of the day, he just wants to be normal. Mm-hmm. And so he's basically confessing to this priest about how, you know, yeah, I know everybody thinks I have the life, but really, I want what you have. I just want to be normal. And I feel like it's, when I say underrated, not in the sense that Batman Ego is underrated and that it's a phenomenal story, but I feel like it got unjust hate on it. Maybe, I'm not saying it didn't get the love it deserved, but I'm saying it got more hate than it deserved.
It definitely got caught up in the maelstrom of both love and hate for Hush. And I think you make a valid point in that if Azzarello had been allowed to expand on his story instead of trying to compress it into basically a single arc, more or less, if it had room to breathe, I think it would have been a much stronger story. So that is one I need to revisit, especially looking at it from that angle.
I want to quote you here on Derek, because not to add insult to this, but the only experience I have with that is I bought issue 1, and because it's a cool cover. I hang comics.
It is a cool cover.
I hang comics on walls sometimes for art, and Derek's exact words when I bought it was, "Hey, look what I found in the pile." And his exact words, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, I was one of the people that really hated that story when I first read it. But I'll give it another. I mean, I'm willing to give it another shot. And that was honestly, I have reread the first trade and a half since that moment.
Well, and the good news for any listeners out there, because of BVS and all this stuff going around, all these stories we mentioned pretty much are back in print.
Yeah.
I know Secret Identity just got a giant hardcover re-release. I think the Man Who Has Everything has a re-release coming up. I know most of the stuff is evergreen we've talked about, but a lot of the stuff that isn't is getting re-released.
Mine isn't.
Uh-oh.
My number 5 is really esoteric and weird, and I love it for that reason. I picked up the Showcase Supermans when they first came out of curiosity, and like I say, I love the Superman character. And man, those Silver Age Superman stories are bug nuts, batshit crazy. They are so much fun, and they are so much of their time. I know the traditional choice is the one where Red Kryptonite gives Superman a lion's head, and he kind of does a Beauty and the Beast thing with Lois Lane. But my choice, the one I had to point to, just because of the absolute bonkers craziness of it, Superman number 159, which is the first appearance of Titano the Super Ape. Titano was basically a King Kong knockoff with, wait for it, kryptonite vision. He actually blasted kryptonite rays out of his eyes that weakened Superman, and he kind of had a thing for Lois Lane. And oh my God, it's nuts. It's so hilarious that, and you know, put it honestly, and that was a thing. That story came out in 1959, and it was a proven trackable thing that if you put a monkey or a gorilla or an ape or some kind of primate on your cover, your book sold more. So they gave a monkey fucking kryptonite vision and threw him at Superman, and it was delightful. And honorable mention, I adore Mark Waid, and I think Superman Birthright is probably the single best take on Superman's origin. Fuck you, John Byrne. But
I'll agree with that.
I just had to bring up Silver Age Superman is nuts, y'all, and I really love it.
I'm trying to think of honorable. This one was harder for me to make than Batman, to be honest.
See, what was weird for me was that Batman was so hard to make because, like I say, my Batman is so completely defined by the animated series. I was like, what comics do I love with Batman that actually define him as a character and aren't just badass Batman comics?
I think, I'm trying to think. I think the only ones that I even considered that almost made it, I know Last Son of Krypton was almost on it.
Nice.
A lot of Jeff Johns stuff was almost on it, but I feel like I love Jeff Johns, but a lot of his stuff is just more of a retelling than a new statement.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to Superman. Just love it or hate
also,
it.
Green Lantern.
Yeah, but you could. That's like a retelling that needed to be retold a lot. That's like the Bible going from Latin to English. It kind of had to happen for anyone to read it ever.
But to tie it back into Superman, the Black Lotus story in Green Lantern actively pissed me off. like I was actually reading Jeff Johns' Green Lantern because I never sat down and read it. And I was reading it all in a go, and I was like, I can see why people say he takes certain elements from certain stories and and plays with them. And I was like, but it's still enjoyable. And then I got to the retread of the Black Lotus stuff for The Man Who Has Everything, and I was like, that motherfucker. This whole story is, now it's Mongul's son, and he's got a field of black lotuses. See how much better I am than Alan Moore? I gave it bigger things. And I was just like, oh, fuck you, dude.
But see, you do that, but, you look at Grant Morrison's run on Batman, where that was his goal, was to make every Batman story continuity.
Yeah, but
and he went back
he didn't give Batman a library of black notebooks. Or black case books. He had the one black case book. He didn't make bigger mean better.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Which side note, once again, connect to next week's podcast. I'm excited about Gerard Way's doing the same thing with Doom Patrol. We're trying to connect them all into one symbiotic universe.
Nice.
That's his goal on it, and dude owns every issue of Doom Patrol. That's my new goal also, because there's a lot of Doom Patrol I've read. Man, next episode's gonna be good. I hope you guys like this episode too, though. I'm sorry.
I feel like we just got Kanye'd in the middle of our. All right, I'm not saying this one's bad, but next week is going to be like the best podcast ever.
Life of Pablo was great, but wait till TurboGrafx 64 comes out. That's a very specific Kanye joke for everybody in the audience. I hope you liked it.
I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you. Well, I was going to say, really quick question. Who's a writer that hasn't really messed with the Superman or Batman or either or that you would like to see tackle the character?
I mean, my go-to answer is always Brian Wood, because I love his characterization of stuff. I'd rather see him on Superman instead of Batman. But as far as Batman, just because of his stuff on Daredevil, has Bendis ever really done anything for Batman? I know he's pretty much just done Marvel, so...
Yeah, that's the big one, yeah.
And I just got done reading Fight Club 2, which, oh my gosh, we may need to talk about that sometime. But I wouldn't mind, I would love to see Chuck Palahniuk's take on either one of these characters.
It'd be interesting, especially knowing how he writes and the kind of detail he goes into. It would be a very cerebral and unique Batman.
Well, Fight Club 2 was a comic book. He did it in comic book form instead of novel form. And so now that he is familiar with the layout and how to do it, I mean, of course, I have a fanboy heart on for Chuck Palahniuk. So
that's fair.
But yeah, seeing him do something like a Superman, or actually probably I see him doing Batman better than Superman.
Yeah.
So.
See, unless it's escaping me, I can't think of a major... I mean, I can think of him playing with the character, but has Gaiman ever had a definitive his take on Superman?
Kind of. He did the Superman Green Lantern Legend of the Green Flame story.
That's all I can think of, though. I would love to see him do his all-star, his 6-issue what is Superman to him kind of thing.
Right.
Well, I wasn't impressed with whatever happened to the Caped Crusader or whatever it was.
Yeah.
His Batman story.
Yeah.
It was it was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as I felt it should have been.
It definitely.
I think, as much as I adore Andy Kubert, I don't think he was the right artist for that.
I could agree.
I mean, Andy Kubert's a great Batman artist, but he's not a great Batman artist for a Neil Gaiman story.
It's true.
My kind of knee-jerk reaction to a question like that is always Brian K. Vaughan. And while I am incredibly curious as to what Brian K. Vaughan would do as Superman, he did a 3-part Batman story that was, meh at best. Honestly, the more I think about it, I don't love her work, but I am fascinated by it, and I think she's so incredibly humanist in what she does. I am actually really, really curious as to what Kelly Sue DeConnick would do with Superman, because she comes at everything from such a humanist angle that I really want to see what she would do with an alien from another planet and his trying to relate to humans and us as people, and what he would do with Superman's relationship, or what she would do with Superman's relationships. For Batman, just based on the stuff he was doing for Punisher and kind of getting back into that, Grant Morrison, it's all true, it all happened vibe, I would actually kind of adore to see what Rick Remender could do with Batman.
I want Karen Gillan on Superman. I changed my answer.
Oh God, that is such a good choice. Holy shit.
My new answer. Rebirth.
Yes.
Make it happen. Oh no, because Peter Tomasi. I'm actually okay with that. Never mind.
Yeah, Peter Tomasi looks to be a pretty exciting Superman writer.
I won't say my Batman because it's my obvious choices and anyone would guess it. But yeah. So that is. It said that just led into what would possibly be the weakest ending ever of just silence followed by that's the episode, guys.
And that's it. Thank you.
Yay!
So, Lance, where can people find you? I assume it's the same place they are finding us right now.
Possibly.
Yeah. We're part of the Night Nerd family. SoundCloud.com/NightNerd, thenightnerd.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, The Night Nerd, The Night Nerd. Just look it up, and you'll find all of y'all's great stuff, all of my decent stuff.
It's great stuff. He's lying. It's actually really great. Also, we haven't really said this, I think, on air. I've mentioned it in a few of our other places. You do a daily podcast, dude. Mm-hmm. You are Monday through Saturday. You are on the air. You are talking. That is something that I am currently aspiring to do. People know that I'm soon launching Assembling the Avengers, a Avengers Minute by Minute podcast, which I will be doing daily. But I am kind of daunted, and you are kind of my beacon, man. You're my rock. You do this weekly. You've been doing it for over a month. You just keep getting better. And I'm not saying that because you signed the paychecks.
What paychecks?
They're paychecks.
Wait, sorry.
That's what's so cold with these things. No, yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it's. I mean, I owe it all to you guys. It's a weird symbiotic relationship. I never did any of this. And you guys were like, "Hey, come talk with Daredevil." I was like, "Okay." And after I did, I was like, "I want to do this all the time."
You have a hidden origin story then.
Yeah.
It's you're Daredevil. We're the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Well, or if I'm all it takes. I hope it doesn't happen, but if you guys get murdered, that's like the perfect superhero story right there.
That's true. The podcast Avenge Us.
I'm coming back as a villain, I guarantee.
I have to do it every day.
Which you just did a baseball week. Was this week, which we're recording, just wrapped up? I'm guessing then.
Yes, I did. It was opening week for baseball, and you'd be surprised at how many crossovers are. Obviously a movie, because the way it does, Monday is video games, Tuesday is TV and movies, Wednesday's comics, Thursdays is throwback, Fridays I actually take fan suggestions, people email in questions, and Saturday, which Derek guest starred on last week in our comedy week, I just do a soapbox and talk about what I want. Yeah, in baseball, it went really well with comics. The Hulk has been in like 5 stories about baseball,
which I find delightful. I think that's amazing. That was a fun episode.
Well, thanks.
Of course. In addition to The Night Nerd, we are available on Facebook. We are facebook.com/BlahBlahPodcast. We are on Twitter as @BlahBlahPodcast. I am personally on Twitter @VoodooBen.
I'm @HellhoundF5.
And if you wanted to email us, we are blah blah podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. So yeah, we want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Let us know what stories from Batman and Superman. Not even necessarily. I mean, we really didn't touch on Grant Morrison's JLA. If Rock of Ages is your definitive Batman Superman story, we want to know. I'm sorry.
I said Dark Side is.
Yes. Anything. I mean, tell us what you think. Tell us why we're right. Tell us why we're wrong. We love hearing we're wrong. Believe it or not, it actually helps us grow as people. So, find us on any of those places. Keep checking out SoundCloud for more episodes of The Night Nerd and episodes of Blah Blah Comics, Blah Blah Curse Words. This delightful little podcast here. You may have to actually bleep some of those.
Earmuffs, Frank. Earmuffs.
Yes.
Frank.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't cuss enough this episode, so I had to make up for it. Especially since I didn't get to cuss at all on my Night Nerd appearance.
Dude, yeah, you were trying hard not to cuss. I heard that one.
It was really funny. We actually did that live in person at my house, and I could see he'd be like, he'd like step up to say something and kind of step back and
I could tell
a different word to use.
Yeah, there's like this.
Yeah, because those of you that don't know, The Night Nerd is very PG.
Yes.
So you can listen to it with the kids in the car.
We're Night Nerd After Dark.
Yes.
We're the extreme branch. We're Wildstorm.
Hells yes. I am totally stealing that. That is now what we are branding ourselves.
Young Animal.
So you guys are like the Red Shoe Night Nerd? Or
that's right.
Yes.
The Skinamax?
Night Nerd, yes. Perfect. And on that note, I think we are done before I start Tourette'sing more into the microphone. We love each and every single one of you people. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for finding us on SoundCloud. We'll try to get back on iTunes eventually, but right now, honestly, we're super happy with what we're doing and where we're at. So thanks for hunting us down. Thanks for listening. You guys are amazing. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.